I'm Brian Van, sportbiketrackgear.com. Today we're going to put on a smog blockoff plate from Driven on our 2015 Yamaha YZF-R3 STG project bike. Why would you do this? We put a full system on this, right? Full exhaust. And now on diesel, right, the thing pops and farts quite a bit. That is a byproduct of the air injection system, part of the emission system. And also remember, you know, when you put a full system on, you do this kind of stuff, you know, you're crossing over that street legal border. So just so you're aware of that. By eliminating this, it's going to reduce that and would also allow you to take the bike and have it dyno tuned, put a fuel controller on it with an Autotune so you can get an accurate map. Okay, so if you're doing a full exhaust, this is a good idea. You'll also lose a solenoid, a little bit of weight off the bike, but when the bike weighs as little as this does, I don't know that that would be the major motivation. This is a pretty involved project, okay? This should give you an idea how to do it yourself if you've never done this before, right? If you're not comfortable after you watch this, take the bike to a licensed mechanic, have them do it for you. We need to pull the gas tank off the motorcycle. Before we can do that, we have to get some trim panels off. That'll allow us to get to our seat and pop the seat off. So I'm going to begin with our two side trim panels, fasteners here. This little R3 is pretty well engineered, so it comes apart and goes back together, I would say, pretty darn well. Go ahead and get these fasteners out, and then there's also a push pin that's going to hold it in place. Okay, and one more up here. Pops right out, so it's held in place with these two push pins, right? Sliding the rubber grommets, and then these two fasteners here. We'll put this to the side in an area where I won't step on it. Once we have these off, it's going to give us access to the fasteners for the seat, as well as the fuel tank. Okay, just like the other side. I'm going to get our passenger seat off. I need to get this little trim panel here out of the way. This will give us access to our rider seat. Fasteners right here, 8mm bolt heads underneath the trim panel. Okay. Bad boy's off. Seat just basically pulls back, right? There's a tang here that slides underneath here, and then the two bolts all the way in the back. Put that off to the side. It's going to bring us to our fuel tank fasteners back here, and we also have one up here on the fuel tank cover itself. As you can see, still pretty basic hand tools, and Yamaha did a really nice job of keeping everything, I would say, pretty darn consistent in terms of fasteners. Now we've got some fasteners that hold the tank cover on the tank. Go ahead and pull those out. It's going to be a total of 4. I've actually got on this motorcycle a metal tank underneath the plastic cover. Okay, all the fasteners are out of the tank cover. What you want to do is kind of grab it here at the back, grab it here at the front. There's 2 push pins in place that hold it down. You'll see right here. Okay, show you on the inside. So I found if you grab it at the back and the front at the same time, it'll come off pretty easy. Just a little note here, you can see one of these rubber grommets, okay, that mounts the tank cover to the tank, has migrated out of there. You want to make sure you keep your eye on that stuff because you're going to need all this when you put it back together. So I'm going to go ahead and address this right now so that when we go back together, we're good to go and this is not a hindrance. Go ahead and put this off to the side. And now we're ready to tackle the actual fuel tank itself because we're going to need to get in underneath the tank here to install our block-off plate. We're going to use 10 millimeters head fasteners. Just grab a socket. Once we have the tank mounts loose, you're going to have to address the fuel connector, as well as the vent lines and the electrical connector. You know, even just as far as we've gotten, should be an indicator. This is it's a pretty challenging project. Certainly it's one of those that if you're looking at it going, I don't know if that's for me, you're definitely going to want to consider taking it to your local dealership, local Yamaha dealer, and have them get involved in the project for you. Okay, now looking at this, I think the right play here is going to be to leave the tank on because there's our plate right here. Here's our solenoid right here. I can access everything I need to without actually taking the tank all the way off the bike. Okay, it's held on there pretty good right now, so that's what I'm going to do. When we come back, I'll begin working on the block-off plate and the solenoid. Okay, here we go. Here's our block-off, or here's our plate, right? Air injection plate. We've got a tube that runs over to the solenoid. And then we have a hose that runs from the solenoid to the air box. We're going to be removing this hose, this solenoid, as well as this hose and this block-off plate here. The solenoid is simply held to some molded plastic parts here via a little rubber grommet. It's going to go ahead and just open up by releasing that. Try and get in here and undo our electrical connector. It's unplugged, and now we're going to get to the block-off plate as well as the hose here. For the block-off plate, we have two Allen fasteners. Going to loosen those up. Normally the factory fasteners in this area have a lot of Loctite on them. I just noticed these don't, so they're coming out a lot easier than normal. These fasteners will be reused. Okay, now just give it a light tug in the upward position. You'll be reusing, okay, beneath this you'll see there are the reeds, okay, and the gasket. That stuff all stays in place and will be reused. I'm going to go ahead and take and slide the driven plate on there now. Just going to orient it both ways and just make sure. The instructions for this are pretty vague at the end of the day, but that seems like the cover looks pretty symmetrical. Let's get that fastener back in there. It's pretty tight down in here, as you can see. Now we're going to be able to rotate this out of the way and prepare it for just complete removal. It's going to give us a little more room to operate with. And we can run these fasteners down. You can do things to create more room if you're comfortable doing that. You can pull your plug wires. I'm going to leave everything attached. And go ahead and snug the fasteners up. This would be an area where I would say that some blue Loctite wouldn't be a bad idea, but I'll leave that up to you. Okay, fasteners are tight. Let's go ahead and rotate that plug wire back like so. Now we need to get this clamp off. And they've got it rotated so that the clamp itself is facing downward. So what I'm going to try and do is use this hose tool here to bring it around a little bit, like so. See, and by just getting down in there, I was able to rotate that clamp facing upward, and this is going to allow me to get some pliers on it so I can release it. And it slides right off our airbox. Driven also supplies a cap, hose cap to go on there. We're going to go ahead and get that and put that on now. One thing that I usually find is you're not able to reuse the stock clamp, okay? You end up having to come up with an alternative to that clamp because, you know, this ends up being just a little bit thinner than the stock hose, and in the end it won't really have any clamping force, okay? You could try and compress the clamp, see if that works for you, or you could use safety wire if you have some. Because you definitely need to make sure that is going to be held on there securely and not come off. I'm going to go with the safety wire option. Got some right here. It's easy to do, it's effective long term. So what we'll do is just loop it around. Normally when you do a lot of this, the blockoffs, you actually have the entire airbox off. So it makes some of these little steps easier, but truth be told, with this bike, there's no reason to pull it with the way it's located behind the actual engine itself. So we'll just leave it in place and just kind of deal with the tight quarters. Let me go ahead and safety wire that on there. There's no fluid or anything to really worry about here. You just want to make sure you've got enough pressure on the hose that it will not slide off. Okay, like that. All right, you can see that I've clearly got it on there about 1/4 of an inch. It's going to create some pressure, so that's not just going to slide off. Okay, now we're ready to deal with that electrical connector. You know what, I'm just going to make myself a little bit of an access point here. Having a hard time getting in there and reaching that. I'd also like to take the opportunity to put a little bit of electrical tape around that, just so we don't end up with a bunch of corrosion down the line. A little tight down in here. 2 push pins, 2 fasteners to deal with. And once we have this panel off, right, we'll be securing our connector. Okay, got the fasteners out of this. Give it a little tug rearward. That'll allow it to slide out. And this is just going to open it up for me so I can get down in here and just do this the right way. You know, this is one of those things where, you know, you could really just kind of throw the towel in and just do it halfway. But you know what? At the end of the day, take the time, do it right so that your end result is a good, clean end result. This is one of those places where just, you know, taking a second to seal this up is just not a bad idea. It's one piece of electrical tape. Takes just a second here. The main thing is to have covered the top portion of the connector. You don't really need to get too fancy with it. And now we can just get in here, and I've got a little cable tie. Got a whole lot more room to deal with, and I want to secure it to this wiring harness. Yes, we have succeeded. Okay. All right, got that in there. We're going to trim the tail. When we come back, I will have this trim panel back on. We're going to slide the tank back in place, and we're going to wrap our project up. Okay, we're all tidied up down in here now. We're going to go ahead and put our fuel tank back into place. When you do that, just make sure we're not kinking any supply hoses, right? Vents, any of that stuff. Looks like that's all going to go back in there nicely. Slide this thing into place. Put our fasteners back in. And we're to the easier part of the project now. I don't know about you all, but today's Friday and I'm really feeling Mexican today. I'm feeling some carne asada, whole jalapenos, lightly grilled. Maybe chase it down with a Corona Light or 2. Okay, get our tank tight, make sure all the fasteners are in there, they're good and tight, and then we are ready for our fuel tank cover. Okay, we're ready for our tank cover. Remember, we learned when we took it off, we got the 2 push pins right here. Okay, so when we put this thing on, I want to make sure we get everything oriented just right. Kind of found that if you slide it towards the back and then migrate it up to the front, that's a great way to start. Watch these fasteners back here. You want to make sure you get the spacers to slide over their mounting points. So kind of pull out on your cover a little bit. That's going to allow you to get it into position. And you can feel the push pins kind of get in place, like so. Now, I really want to double check back here and make sure that everything's okay. Make sure that all the spacers and the grommets are all in place. You can see we got one that pushed out a little bit here. We want to deal with that, like so. Spread the cover apart and migrate it around here. Got a trim panel on either side. We got to make sure it drops in there. And nice and flush now. So you can see that's going to take a hot minute to do that. Be patient. Make sure your end result is good. We've got our 4 fasteners. Retain the tank cover. We'll go ahead and put these in, snug them up. We've got 1 fastener That's going to be up front here. Drop that one into place right now. When we come back, we'll be working on our rider seat. All right, here we go. Rider seat. Remember, we want to make sure this tongue is up in that slot. So kind of wiggle it around, check it, pull up on it, make sure you got it. You don't want your seat coming loose when you're riding. 2 fasteners here in the back, 8mm heads. Thus far, we've used a pretty basic assortment of hand tools. This is stuff that most any rider would have. A lot of it we sell. We've got all the T-handles. This Motion Pro spinner T-handle, one of my favorite tools, something we've got on the site. I've had this for a long time now. Okay. We've got a trim panel back here for the seat. This dips in, right? Locks in underneath that panel. There's a tongue, and then it locks in like so. 2 fasteners back here. They're using a couple of different fasteners on the bike. These have a real coarse thread to them, so they're easy to differentiate between these and the ones, say, that we're holding the side trim panels on. When you tighten this up, there's no reason to really over torque this. Okay, you want to be careful because you can damage fasteners like that if you over torque. Passenger seat. Make sure it's locked in place like so. And now we are ready to do our side trim panels. Okay, if you remember correctly, they have 2 push pins that go into the rubber grommets. That's how we're going to begin to secure them. Come over to the other side. Push them into place like so. The plastic tongue up front, make sure that is in there. Now we have 4 fasteners to put in. We'll snug these up, and then we're going to start our little R3 and make sure that we have not created any issues while installing the block-off plates. Very important, after a project like this, don't just jump on your bike and take it for a ride. Okay, you've had the fuel tank off, you've had the seat, all kinds of things, you've had them apart. Take a hot minute or 2, run the bike, observe the bike, listen to the bike, and make sure nothing has went wrong. Okay, we're ready to start the bike now and double check, make sure everything is good to go. Let it warm up. Just listen overall. As long as you installed the block-off plate flush, right, got everything tight, you're not going to have an issue. Run the bike for a minute, check it all out before you ride it. We're good to go. And as you can see, this is a pretty involved project. I mean, this isn't the kind of thing that every rider's going to want to do themselves. So this is something you can absolutely take it to your local bike shop, and they'll be happy to do it for you if you're not comfortable. This is our driven block-off plate install on our 2015 Yamaha YZF-R3.